Good afternoon, Director. Are you able to get me?
Yes, I'm able to get you. Good afternoon, Yvonne.
Uh, Good afternoon, sir. I don't know my camera. I think I need to do some settings with my laptop. It's telling me
Uh,
that my camera can't be accessed.
Okay.
Good afternoon, viewers. It's 15:35, and we'll be starting our live stream production shortly. Today, we are hosting Mr. Matamwandi Matongo, Chief Executive Officer, as well as Executive Director for the Zambia Tourism Agency. So please um, stay with us and enjoy the show. Good afternoon, good evening, and good morning to all of you that are joining us from wherever you are this wonderful 5th December 2023. You are very welcome to our Productivity Zed360 Expert Talk, which we are airing every Tuesday of a new month. And so today we are in the new month of December, and we are featuring Mr. Matongo Matamwandi, who will join us later during the session. We are starting this program, and to start with, I would love to invite our Director Cyprian Mayamba, who is also President for the Pan-African Productivity Association, to just give us an introduction to what productivity is. Thereafter, I will introduce the subject and introduce Mr. Matongo Matamwandi, who is our guest speaker for this program. Mr. Mayamba, sir.
Thank you very much, Yvonne, for getting us started for this month's Productivity Zed360 Expert Talk on productivity. I must mention that I'm very excited that since the launch of this program, which was done 4 months ago, we've consistently now managed to broadcast this program every first Tuesday of every month. And this gives me hope that whilst for the last 4 months, we've had our learning period. I must now say, as we'll be opening the new year 2024, we're going to hit the ground running because then we'll have put in place all the systems to be able to run an effective show. I'm also very happy that in this show today, Mr. Matongo Matamwandi is going to join us to elaborate and discuss on the issues of productivity, how it can be leveraged to enhance economic growth. I'm also happy that our viewers have continued to join this program from inception, and also to mention that the essence of this particular talk, and hence the name Productivity Zed360 Expert Talk, is that we want to look at productivity from different perspectives, from all around in terms of all sectors of the economy. And this is the reason why we've been calling upon and inviting eminent speakers on various subjects to give us their perspectives about productivity. So you recall from the time the minister launched the show in August of this year, the following month we had the special assistant to the president for finance and investments, Sajito Kayumba. Thereafter, we had the acting permanent secretary for the Ministry of Labor and Social Security, Mr. Zakaria Luhanga, who spoke on the subject of human resource management. And then thereafter, we had Mr. Sani Zulu, who graced our show in October, who was CEO of Stanchart. And for this December show, we have Mr. Matongo Matamwandi. So you can tell from the mix of eminent speakers we've had since inception that have been looking at productivity from all different angles. I'm very happy, therefore, to be able to host this program yet again. And thank you, Yvonne. And because of technology, our two other speakers on this show are joining us from different parts of the world. And so I wish to welcome you, Yvonne, And since you are in Mauritius, bonjour. I'm not very sure if you've learned some French already. And Mr. Matongo Matamwandi is joining us from the tourist capital of Zambia, Livingstone. He's going to tell us which language they're speaking in Livingstone right now, as we are broadcasting to the rest of the world. And what a better place to find you, sir, than Livingstone, which is a tourist capital of not just Zambia, but a tourist capital of the entire region. So we're happy that you're able to join us, sir.
Thank you very much.
So to get the show started, great. So I can see you've learned some French already. Merci. So to get the show started, as always we do, I'm going to give a very short presentation in terms of what productivity is, in terms of how we've conceptualized it in Zambia, and how we are promoting productivity in Zambia before we can call upon our keynote speaker today. And so in terms of what productivity is, I'm just going to put my presentation up on the screen to just be able to speak to it. Okay, and you can confirm, Yvonne, if you're able to see my screen.
Yes, Director, it's very visible.
So to just set the scene, I just want to begin by saying, when we say what is productivity, we are looking at productivity from many angles, like I said, hence the term Productivity Zed360. But then what it means is that if it is in the workplace, productivity means how do we perform our work for us to be able to achieve our objectives. And onto the screen there, I've got an animation, a picture, which is depicting a workplace. And as you can tell and see, this is certainly a very, very unproductive, if you like, inefficient workplace. And now, since this place, from the look of things, doesn't seem to be a very progressive workplace, I think it's a good point for us to start or begin our discussion of what productivity is. As you can tell from that picture, this is an enterprise. They probably are in the transport sector and they are delivering goods. But as you can tell from the tools which they are using, you can tell that they are not going to be very, very effective in delivering these goods. It may take long, probably not even deliver these goods at all because of the tools that they are using. The cart, for instance, which they are using, doesn't have the appropriate wheels. And also the methods they are using to pull and to push are probably not the very best methods. As you can tell, the gentleman in front is almost strangling his neck in trying to pull the cart. And those at the back, you can tell there are some who are pushing, there are some who are just touching the cart. In fact, there are even some who are hanging on to the cart to catch a lift. So I can certainly tell that if this is an enterprise, if this is a business, they're not going to be very effective and successful as a business. And so the solutions are how do they improve their effectiveness? You could, for instance, argue there are many ways they could do this. But probably the first question you should ask is, why in the first place are they doing the work the way they are doing this work? You can certainly tell that their method of operation is not the best. And probably can tell, for instance, that the wheels they are using is not the right type and it's not the right shape. But if you're to search for solutions, you don't have to go very far because the very goods that they are transporting could actually be solutions to the problem or the major problem which they are facing. They are carrying the right tires, yet they're using the wrong tires to transport these tires. So as a first line of intervention, you could probably say, why don't they just use those tires which they are carrying? And the second would be, why haven't they thought about this before? And this, therefore, confirms the fact that to be a productive workplace, you have to have two ingredients as a starting point. First and foremost, there has to be the management, which has to plan and set out the work to be done, and which management must provide the tools for the work to be executed. But also there has to be the worker, on the other hand, whose effort must just not be physical, but also to think about better ways of improving their work. And therefore, it confirms that it actually takes two to tango. There has to be both management commitment on one hand, as well as the willingness to participate by the workers. Because if the two sat together and brainstormed on how they could improve their circumstances, they're probably going to arrive at a solution, which may not cost them that much because the wheels are already within their hands. And so as productivity practitioners, we always argue that the solutions to the problems we're facing either in our workplaces or in our countries can actually be resolved with solutions that are already within our hands. Without having to inject additional capital, the solutions could be found into these problems which they are facing. But then it has to take time for them to sit and think about how they are going to execute this work in a more efficient and effective manner. Hence, Abraham Lincoln said, if I had 6 hours to cut down a tree, I would spend the first 4 hours sharpening the axe. Meaning, if I had 6 hours to cut down a tree, I would spend the first 4 hours to plan on how best I'm going to execute the task. Because without that, with a blunt axe, you probably are not even going to accomplish the task in the 6 hours that you've been given. But if you spend the first 4 hours to properly plan your work, you're probably just going to take another additional 1 hour to accomplish your task. So there is value in planning work. There is value in both management and the workers sitting down to plan how they are going to effectively execute their work. Because we are saying if we have to be productive in the workplace, we have to be able to utilize the resources very, very well, but we also have to accomplish the goals, which in our model of our definition of productivity, we say productivity is both being efficient and being effective. But most importantly, as you could tell from the equation on top of my slide, it's also about the mindset, the attitudes. So if we were to look at this equation from a mathematical point of view, you can tell that even though you could be efficient, you could be effective, if your attitudes are poor, it nullifies whatever gains you'd have made with your efficiencies and effectiveness. And therefore, attitudes or mindsets are a huge enabler. So in this model, you could tell that productivity is about converting inputs into outputs in an efficient way. But then once you've done this, the next question should be that are your outputs meeting the goals? In terms of outcomes, are they meeting the expectations? If you're in business, are you meeting customer expectations? If you're a public institution, are you meeting the public's expectation? So there will be no point in you achieving your efficiencies and yet you're not able to achieve your objectives as an organization, as a country, or indeed even as an individual. Therefore, productivity is about being efficient in the use of resources, but also having impact. And so when you talk about efficiency, we are saying you have to utilize your resources very, very well. Whatever resources you have, they have to be used to the optimum possible levels with very little or very, very minor wastage. But that as you do so, you must ensure that this undertaking is meeting the goals. And hence, our model of productivity is that we should be both efficient and effective, but with a very huge enabler, which is the issue of the mindset. And talking about the mindset, it means that we've got what it takes as a country to actually be able to achieve our goals. We've got what it takes to achieve our vision 2030. We also have got what it takes for us to achieve our 8th National Development Plan, only if we apply our minds to it. But to explain more about this subject, I'll leave it to our guest speaker today, Mr. Matongo Matamwandi, who is going to break down this subject for us. And so I'll hand back to our moderator, Yvonne, to introduce our guest speaker. Over to you, Madam Yvonne.
Thank you very much, Director, for that introduction of productivity. And today's discussion is leveraging our productive capacities for productivity growth. You are all aware that Zambia belongs to the least developed countries and landlocked developing countries group. The country has made modest socio-economic progress in some areas, but still exhibits many of the challenges afflicting LDC in general. You are also aware that Zambia's economy remains significantly dependent on the mining and export of copper. This high dependence on extractive has left the economy vulnerable to fluctuations in the copper price for most of its post-colonial history and highly exposed to external shocks such as the COVID-19 pandemic. In all this, we are aware from research that Zambia's economy is furthermore characterized by weak productive capacities and lack of structural economic transformation. And hence the focus on this government to enhance economic transformation. So I want to lay just a brief understanding of the word productive capacities that we are looking at. I know the presenter is going to elaborate more, but according to the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, UNCTAD, in 2006, they tried to define productive capacities as the productive resources, entrepreneurial capabilities, and production linkages that together determine a country's ability to produce goods and services that will help it grow and development. So further, when you look at these productive capacities or productive resources that have been mentioned here, we are referring to both natural and human resources, as well as financial and physical capital. Entrepreneurial capabilities encompass both core and technological competences. So finally, production linkages include information exchange, resource flows, and backward and forward linkages along the value chain. So these interrelated elements together make up a country's productive capacity, which enable inclusive economic growth and development. And so the discussion today is very timely and I think very relevant on how we can leverage on these that I have just mentioned. And to help us elaborate more on this subject is our very own Mr. Matamwandi, who is an award-winning CEO and marketer and served as brand ambassador for Africa Continental Free Trade Area. He is chartered marketer, trade and investment promotion expert and academician with specialization in branding and consumer psychology. He is also a training specialist in soft skills. Currently, Mr. Matamwandi serves as Chief Executive Officer of the Zambia Tourism Agency. He previously worked for Zambia Development Agency, Kenneth Kaunda Metropolitan University, a private university he co-founded, and 5 multinationals. His more than 30 years of experience spans across different sectors. He's a fellow and past president of the Zambia Institute of Marketing, a fellow of the Chartered Institute of Marketing, UK, and honorary member of African Competing Confederation. Mr. Matamwandi is an international speaker and has given lectures and presentations at different international forums, such as World Investment Forum in Geneva, World Travel Market in London, World Tourism and Investment Forum in Madrid, ITB in Berlin, Tokyo International Conference on African Development in Yokohama, Forum for China, Africa Cooperation in Beijing, Africa Investment Forum in Cairo, South African Business Forum in Pretoria, African Marketing Confederation in Entebbe, among many others that I cannot manage to all list this afternoon. He spends most of his free time mentoring and coaching young fellows. I actually do remember the recent a discussion where Mr. Matamwandi was asked to sell Zambia in 3 minutes. And in less than 3 minutes, he did actually sell Zambia. Victoria Force, wonderful people. And I've forgotten the third one. So today we are actually very privileged to see or to be with Mr. Matamwandi to share on this very important subject. You are very welcome, sir, and we are glad that you took time in your very busy schedule to join us this afternoon on this Productivity Zed360 Expert Talk. This is your expert in which you reach out to all the citizens across the country. And actually, I should also mention that this is also being followed by our international friends worldwide. So you are very welcome. And having introduced you, sir, I want to give you this opportunity to speak to us.
Thank you so much. I would request you just give me some feedback if I'm audible. I'm speaking to you on the banks of the Zambezi River. And even as I'm talking, I'm actually overseeing the river. So just a confirmation that you can get me.
I can get you from my end, sir. I don't know about others. I'm also speaking facing the Indian Ocean. So I don't know, Mr. Mayamba, who is facing government complex. Please confirm for us.
It seems to have disappeared. I think we need his confirmation. Okay, he's joining in.
Mr. Mayamba, are you able
Yes,
to confirm
I can get both of you. I can get both of you clearly. Would you want me to share your screen, Mr. Matamwandi?
Okay. Please go ahead, as I'm just giving just a short intro, because please, you can share it.
All right.
So as he's trying to share my presentation, I know when we discuss productivity, there's normally a lot of emphasis on the technical skills, and the preamble given was pointing into that direction. I might disappoint a few people because I'm going to take a complete different approach in my presentation. I thought I would not lose this opportunity to speak about the skills that have affected us the most. And in my view, they've affected productivity, especially for a country like Zambia. So I'm not going to discuss marketing today. I'm not going to discuss tourism, which I'm very passionate about. I want to take a slight different approach and spend a bit of some time to talk about what we call soft skills. We all know about the technical skills, and I'll justify why I've taken this position. Is that we sit in Zambia and have the privilege of traveling around Africa and spoken in a number of countries. I've done business in a number of African countries. And there's this huge emphasis on investing in academic training. We are having so many universities being set up, which is a good thing. We are producing a lot of engineers. We are producing a lot of economists. And then people keep on accumulating a lot of academic qualifications. And when you try to link up these academic qualifications with productivity on the ground, you can see that there's a slight mismatch. And in my experience working for multinationals, working for government, and also working in the academics, I did realize that our biggest challenge actually does not lie so much into the technical skills, but in the soft skills. So I deliberately decided that today I'm going to focus on the soft skills and just link it up to productivity. And I'll demonstrate by sharing one of the most critical soft skills that we do not pay a lot of attention to. I can't see my colleagues, and I'm not too sure whether I can get validation that people can get me. I can see my slide. Okay, thank you so much. So my focus today is going to be on productivity and the soft skills, because I think this is probably where we are missing it as Zambia and where we are missing it as Africa. Too much investment in the technical side, and we've forgotten the softer side. So I have quoted these three important people. And this is just to emphasize the importance of soft skills in driving productivity. And I'll quote, "The economy of the future requires a workforce with strong soft skills. Investing in these crucial skills can result in increased productivity." What are soft skills? Soft skills are the behavioral and social traits that enable individuals to work harmoniously with one another and are not just nice to have, but very essential for the growth of a nation. Second slide, please. So you can see a bit of some statistics. I love numbers. As popularly said, numbers do not lie. And some research has been done. This is by BCG, if I'm not mistaken. And the indications are that 92% of talent professionals believe that soft skills are just as important, if not more important than hard skills. And hard skills here, we mean technical skills like engineering skills, plumbing skills, economic skills, and so on. Shockingly, only 37 of the employers feel that their entry-level employees have the necessary soft skills. Now, this is a worldwide research, but it speaks much more to Zambia and Africa, where that percentage could even be lower. The disconnect between the importance of soft skills and the lack of investment indicates how far we have to go. And this is very critical if we are discussing productivity. Without developing essential soft skills, businesses risk losing out on, one, increased productivity, emphasized. Whether you are producing sugar, whether you are producing copper, it simply indicates that you are at a risk of losing out in terms of productivity if you do not invest in soft skills. This affects the tourism sector as well because it's a people-based industry or sector. The second one, the stronger interpersonal relations, you lose out if you do not invest in soft skills. And that has been proven by a lot of research. And if we had time, we would have gone to look at some of the results. And finally, the most critical one, which you lack more on innovation. Innovation is closely linked to creativity. And you have seen that in this world of technology now, there is less hard work and more smart working. And technology does that. And you see that even those of us who come from the marketing world, we've actually realized that the best way of being competitive, whether it's at a world level, at a national or continental level, is to invest a bit more into innovation. And that's why the most talented employees are the ones that are going to give you the best competitive advantage. You only sustain your competitiveness if you invest in talent management and also in developing the soft skills of your people. Anything else can easily be replicated, and why the emphasis on soft skills and productivity. So today, for purposes of this discussion, there's a list of soft skills we could talk about, from communication skills to emotional intelligence to relationship skills to social skills to networking skills, critical thinking skills, strategic thinking skills, and the list is long and long and long. And the last time I was looking at them, critically, you need close to 27 soft skills to actually produce an international business manager, or indeed just a leader. But today I thought, for purposes of sharing, I was going to look at the most basic, which is communication skills. And we think communication skills is a given. It's as easy as just communicating. And what I've done is to look at this soft skill called communication, which is very, very critical for people who are in the industry like ours, the tourism sector, for example. All those who are in technology, just having technology, if you can't communicate, you are not going to reach out to your customers, you'll not reach out to your clients. And I thought I could just recite a few technical issues around the communication skills, and I hope the viewers and listeners can pick a few here at a very personal level. So I start with a quote. And it says for years, organizations hired new employees on the basis of their hard skills, which I was referring to, which generally included their technical expertise, their education certificates and experience. Over time, however, we have noticed that employees with impressive CVs were often difficult to work with, disappointing performers, and a detriment to unity and productivity of other or co-workers. In contrast, they realize that what often proves to be the primary factor in employees' value is their soft skills. These soft skills include abilities such as listening, empathy, questioning, teamwork, problem solving, assertiveness, negotiation, and influencing skills. And these are just some of the examples, and I'm quoting Ken Kande. Next slide, please. I'll attempt just to speak to some of these. And some of them are as basic as listening skills. We take it for granted that everyone can listen. Employees and nations should be investing a lot more in improving people's listening skills. It just changes quite a lot. Most of us, when you are in a meeting, whether it's a board meeting, whether it's a business meeting, we spend a lot of time when other persons are speaking, we are preparing answers to respond and we are not listening. And this is a skill that needs to be taught because it's important for human relations, and this influences a lot of the outcomes of some of the business and conversations that we have. And there's a lot of research that has been done which shows that most liked people normally are described as I like him or I like her and listens to me, I can talk to him. It's because there's a realization that you'll be listening to. You can conduct business, you can supervise others, you can transmit instructions, and you can create that relationship. And there goes the golden rule that treat others as yourself want to be treated. And listening is one of the greatest skills that you can develop to get those skills. Of course, I have a lot to talk about this, but I'm just going to touch the surface. And some of the viewers, then I would encourage you to just go and read more and research around the importance of listening skills. But I want to focus on giving you more tips because personally, because I'm a very, very expressive person, my listening skills when I started my career, even into management, were quite on the lower side. I went to a leadership school, and when I came back, I learned how important listening skills could make it very effective in building teams, getting me supervise people effectively. And I remember very well that I started the habit that every time I went into a meeting, I would open my my notepad, and as we are discussing, on top there, I would write, Matongo, please listen. And that reminded me all the time that I should not just prepare to speak and champion my ideas, but listen a bit more so that I know how I can actually be able to contribute to the conversation. Over the years, my listening skills have greatly improved. Those people who are gifted with talk time and are very expressive, this is something that you can spend a bit more time because we've actually ended up making decisions that are not correct because of our low listening skills. It's a skill and you need to develop it over a period of time. And in listening, we break it down. It's not just listening. You have to drive it to what we call active listening, which is the ability to listen and respond in a non-evaluative way because you are able to communicate that you are listening. We can move to the next slide. So listening normally is classified in three categories. There's what we call basic listening. Basic listening is just stopping talking, but that is not enough when you just keep quiet, okay? There's also restatement or repeating when someone says, the machine is behaving like this, we need to do this. And in there you are saying, did you say the machine is like this? That's active listening, but at a very basic level, you are repeating what you are being told and you are encouraging the other person to give you more detail. There's an intermediate level where you can actually rephrase and paraphrase, ask for clarification. So simply keeping quiet is not enough. Show that you're understanding what is being communicated. And then there's advanced level where now we need to engage ourselves and develop what we call empathy. And you see as we go on that there's a lot more what emotions do when we communicate. And also when we are actually listening. So empathy, which is just putting yourself in the place of the person who is communicating, is quite important in actually showing that you are listening and indeed in demonstrating your listening skills. We call this in leadership as listening with your heart, your head, and your feet, meaning you are showing by body language, you are paraphrasing to show that you are asking questions, but also your emotions by your body language is showing. Someone can't be telling you that they've received a funeral or there's a breakdown and your body language is showing excitement. It means you are actually not part of that conversation and you are not listening. We can move to the next slide. So I've just broken it down for credit purpose, that every time you listen at each of these levels, there's a purpose. And I've tried to demonstrate some of the possible responses you can give. And this, I might not find the time because I'm limited on time and I want to share a lot more. But this is just something, if you have interest, you can read about and start developing this, you know. When someone says something, just merely saying, do you mean this? Or can you clarify on this? Or as I understand, if you plan to do this, these sound basic and obvious. You don't know how these build teams and how this eventually leads to that high level of productivity that comes out of teams. Everyone agrees that teams produce more when you work together, and they call it synergy. But no one talks on how you build teams and how you communicate among teams. And listening is one of those critical, important ingredients in building teams for productivity. We can move on. The next one in communication, which is important, is what we call questioning skills. Again, simply asking questions is not enough. What kind of questions do you ask? I always share an example of if you have a home setup or an office setup, if something is broken in a home, for example, you just go there and say, who has broken this? By just asking that question, the tone, the emphasis, it's so intimidating that the likely answer you're going to get is, it's not me, it's not me. But you need to develop the ability to give what we call life-giving questions, where you are asking at a level where it's very comfortable for the people you are dealing with to give you honest answers, to give you details, and then keep the conversation. And in doing that, there are various questions we use. Some are called closed questions. Others are called open questions. So depending on what you are dealing with, if you are dealing with an aspect that needs precision, closed questions will bring you closer to what you are looking for in order to make a decision. And again, these could just be those questions that require a yes or no answer. And those of you who are lawyers, you know that even in the courts of law, there come a time when you are compelled to give a yes or no, because precision and confirmation of a specific aspect in communication is important. The open ones help you to get more detailed in your explanation, and when you need a lot more information, you use what we call open questions. Again, this is a skill. It doesn't just happen, but my emphasis is we need to develop the skill to ask what we call life-giving questions. Make it as comfortable as possible for people to volunteer information. Those of you who are in leadership, those who are in management, you make decisions based on available information. So it's very important that your ability to ask questions can provide that information that you need. Half the time we make wrong decisions because either the information is insufficient or we are given answers that we want, what our subordinates want you to listen to or hear. and in the process that affects how we perform as organization. We can move on. Again, in looking at questions, this is just expanding it at a very technical level. We normally break it when we are looking at questions. We've got what we call informal questions. When you want to avoid brief answers and you want more information, you can go informal. You're allowed, even a corporate setup, even in a serious meetings at the highest level. I've had opportunities to sit in meetings where presidents address you, and at some point they get informal because there's a purpose. CEOs sometimes become informal and they ask these questions. It becomes very important. Then there's what you call probing questions. Sometimes it becomes important to question the questions, to go deeper. And those who work like in the security wings, in the intelligence system, but also at the highest level of leadership, sometimes it's important to ask probing questions so that you can get clarity and the right information. There are also what we call behavioral questions, and these are sometimes where you ask hypothetical situations because you just want to tell. And a number of us have attended the interviews and we struggle when they give you situational questions because they are hypothetical. There, it's meant to get a bit more information about your behavior pattern. Behavior is part of the team. Behavior is part of what leads to productivity because you can't detach yourself from your behavior. And that is very, very important. And then, of course, what we call pinpoint questions, very specific and to the point. These are also important, especially when you want to close up on matters and you need to make a decision. We can move on. So, to just summarize what I'm talking about, questioning skills, I just wanted to indicate that questioning, just like listening skills, is at 3 levels of questioning. Don't just question. You should question for a purpose, and that's a skill you need to develop. You might write it now and practice it, but soft skills, eventually you need to leave them. They are not what you learn and go and write an exam and pass. They get perfected as you practice, but your conscience needs to become part of this. Some of you who have read a lot about philosophies, you must have heard about Aristotle. Aristotle once said, "We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, therefore, is not an act, but a habit." So questioning and listening skills become a habit and we do it as second nature. So the 3 levels is you question to solicit for facts. Sometimes it's important, get the data right, get the numbers right so that you can. This is important for decision makers. This is important for accountants. This is important for economists. This is important for engineers. We've also seen now that even medical doctors in their practice, they are doing more and more of this. Data is important. But human beings are human beings and they have feelings and they have emotions. So sometimes you need to question to solicit for feelings. Those who are HR experts, those in leadership, those who are in management, you supervise people. People are not machines. It's not just about data. This influences attitudes, and experts have actually said attitude has a direct impact on productivity. But how do you solicit this? It's by asking the right questions, using your questioning skills. And the last one, which is question to solicit for values and beliefs. This determines the motive. Very, very important skill. Again, we are living in this world where now you might work in an organization where you come from different backgrounds. You come from different religious backgrounds. You are from different nations, but working together. So your upbringing and your behavioral patterns might not be precisely the same. So when you work there, you need to have a skill. I have had an opportunity of working in multinationals. And in there, you find in your team, you have someone who has an Indian background, you have someone South African background, someone who has a European background. You might not have the same beliefs and the same values. And these questions are going to help you to know how to supervise and work with them. So that is critical, and that doesn't happen. It requires you to perfect your questioning skills. Next. So again, I've just summarized this. Questioning skills, informal, probing, behavior, and pinpoint. And I've tried to demonstrate a few examples that I've spoken to in trying to practice these skills. We can move on. I'll skip that again. I'm trying to manage my time. The third aspect in communication skills, very, very important. We refer to it as assertiveness. This is a bit of a challenge in most African countries, and Zambia to be specific. You find that people find assertiveness to be arrogance. Sometimes feel it's you are being rude. It's very different. A normal human being will always behave at three levels. You either be assertive, you'll be submissive, or you'll be aggressive. It's always encouraged that you develop your assertive skills because it sits in between. Assertive skills will deal mostly with your honest side, but also knowing the appropriate ways of behaving. And this sometimes can be a challenge, and it affects teams and it affects productivity. If you contrast that with submissiveness, you tend to ignore how you feel. And most of the time you find you think you are carrying a team, but in real terms, you are actually not carrying a team. You are just on your own. And the reason being is that you are always mindful about other people and you give in and agree to things that you do not agree with. Very, very common occurrence in Zambian teams. People will sit in a meeting, whether it's a board meeting or operations meeting, and they will show like they've agreed. And then immediately after the meeting, they'll go in their little corners and just say, I don't think that is going to work. We've tried that before. Lack of assertiveness and a lot of submissiveness makes it uncomfortable for them while they are in these meetings to state the fact and stand with it and defend it. That is very, very retrogressive when it comes to productivity because you make huge mistakes and it affects the outcome of whatever operations you run. But on extreme end, again, you have aggressiveness. This is where now you intimidate other people, you have everything your way, and you ignore completely the views and the feelings of others. Most aggressive leaders, they end up leading submissive subordinates, and that has a huge impact on productivity. And you find that you're always not hitting your targets, you are not meeting your deadlines, and you compromise on your quality standards because of that team spirit. We can move on. Again, I've just summarized it just to help how these stand. For example, in assertiveness, is self-enhancing, expressive, with obviously a lot of respect. You can argue whether it's a CEO, whether it's a minister you are dealing with, whether it's a senior leader. In a good way, you can state your facts because you might have the right solution to the problem at hand. Excuse me, sir, I appreciate this and I appreciate this has done. I have also this different view. Can we consider it? And you give your view. Assertive people will put the facts there and they don't shy out, which is the problem with submissive people who, because the boss has said, they just give in and wrong decisions are being made. So it's very, very important to develop these assertive skills, and leaders have a very, very big role in building their teams and building their assertiveness skills. Again, it's skills. With time, you'll find that it becomes second nature. You can raise your issues. You can disagree without being disrespectful. You make your point, and you have healthy debates in your meetings and in your teams. And ultimately, you'll find that it gives you very, very productive results. The next one. So this is just to share on how you can build your assertive skills. Always as you are building these skills is to know that it's something that, especially for Africans and the Zambians to be specific, sometimes we struggle because our culture does not really help us or train us when we are young to be assertive. Elders are always right, leaders are always right, and this has led to wrong decisions being made. As we build our assertiveness in our behavior, first of all, this is just a basic step. Decide what you really want. Okay, you need to be very clear, and then you need to present it, say it clearly, and be specific. Use your body language to reinforce your opinion. Remember that body language is a huge aspect in terms of communication. Okay, do not be manipulated. Do not side track. Be specific and stay on the point that you want to make. And always aim for win-win situation. It exists. Okay, if there's a different opinion that balances out, find that clear balance, because there might not only be one solution to everything. But the guiding principle is that right is right and wrong is wrong, regardless of who says it. It doesn't matter which leader is there. If it is wrong, it's wrong. And assertive people will question with facts, and they'll put him there. And this is what develops companies. This is what develops families. This is what develops organizations. And this is what develops nations. Next. Again, I'm just emphasizing assertiveness, but I'll skip that in the interest of time. We can move to the next. I just want to touch as much as I can. This is also just to show even the body language side of it. I've picked a few there that you can see that people who are assertive, their posture shows that. People who are aggressive, they are very intimidating in their posture. They have these gestures that intimidate. And people who are submissive, they are always slumped down. And that obviously makes other people take advantage of you and indeed not just believe what point you want to make. Can move on. I've already run through this. We can move to the next slide. Okay. I'm going towards my conclusion, and now I'm focusing just generally on the communication and how important it is. And I'm just quoting from Aristotle, one of my favorite philosophers. In communicating, to be effective, to be able to generate positive results, we need to know that the ethos are important, the credibility of what you are communicating. Number two, the pathos, the emotional side of your communication, you can't ignore it. And then the logos, the mode for appealing to others' sense of reasoning. You don't leave others. It builds teams, it builds productivity, and this is what grows nations. Next one. So in every communication you make, and this is as you develop your skills in communication, just know that at a very basic level, there are three reasons why we communicate. It's to inform, it's to persuade, and it's to build relationships. Most communicators and most of us in teams, we tend to forget the building of the relationships. If you think you are right, it doesn't matter. You make your point, and it doesn't matter how others feel. You can make your point, but you lose the relationships. That is going to affect the productivity of your team or your organization. But you also need to know that sometimes you need to persuade people to see your picture and be converted, and not just use your authority and then get results wrong. This is just to show how big, again, this is researched. Numbers don't lie. The elements of personal communication, the key part is you can see that 55% of our communication is our body language. Don't ignore the body language. 38% is the tone. So between your body language and your tone, you get closer to 80% of your communication. The actual words will give you less than 30% of your communication. So you can craft your words all you want. People can see your body language and read it. People can listen to your tone, and that actually affects your team spirit. So again, it's a skill. How do I portray the right body language, which matches with the words I'm using, which matches with the tone, because that's what people pick the most. Again, it's a skill that you need to develop, and this helps a lot of teams in being productive. The next one. So again, I'm just giving tips. I'll not go into the details of this. These are just the tips on how you can look out for body language. Sometimes we just ignore. People's posture is important. People's eye contacts is important. You have seen people who look into the eyes because the eyes will communicate much more than what you are saying. And all these have been researched, they communicate. With time, you need to develop the skill to be able to read the body language and respond to it. We can move on. So I'm just trying to emphasize that it's not so much about what you say, because that is only communicating 30% or less, okay? It's what people see and then what people are able to actually touch. So in every communication we have, it's very, very important that we do realize this. Again, it's a skill. It's not going to happen naturally. You need to try it. You need to develop it. And that's what is going to make you effective. Whether you're a salesperson, whether you are just a leader, whether you're a family person, in every form of communication, this is what gives you the best results. The next one. Okay. So again, here I'm just trying to break it down and to make more emphasis. You know, how you say these things, it matters. You know, like I indicated, 10% of what you say, and there are so many studies around it. I'm just consolidating the earlier point I made. Your gestures, your facial expressions, your body stance, your posture, it's going to give away 50% of your communication. Your sound, your tone, your volume, your articulation. I'm busy here communicating to you, and these are very, very important. And that's why people nowadays are even challenging. Virtual meetings are important, but there's something it takes away. But under the circumstances, if you have virtual meetings, we normally advise where you can have a full screen communication, because it also gives you the option of reading the gestures and the body language. It all communicates to what you are trying to achieve. The next slide, please. Again, what we say, content is very important. Sometimes we overload what we do. Less is always best. You know, use of colorful language. Sometimes, yes, we overdo it and we overshadow what we are actually communicating. Use of appropriate words. There's so much flowery language now. Sometimes you assume everyone understands and can interpret those words. Wherever possible, unless you're among your peers, avoid jargon. I have seen engineers who have worked there and they are speaking to the floor shop and they are busy using all these huge, big, complicated terminologies. It's unnecessary. If you are in a peer review meeting with fellow engineers, that works because you all understand the jargon. So it's basic things like this that makes a whole lot of a difference. And always understand when you are communicating vertically and when you are communicating horizontally. You need to know, this is my peers, I'm communicating to my subordinates, and I'm communicating to the people above me and the bosses. Again, this will not happen overnight. It's a skill that you need to develop. Okay, and feedback is always important in developing this skill. We can move on. And critical to this whole process, you need to understand yourself first. And that brings me to an element of what we refer to as emotional intelligence. And I'm sure a number of you are aware that in leadership, in supervision, emotional intelligence is more critical than actually your intellectual intelligence. We can move on. I'm just trying to conclude. Again, understanding who you are dealing with, very, very important. Again, understanding your audience. At any given time you communicate, whether it's in a work situation, whether it's in a meeting, you need to understand what audience am I dealing with, and how can you bring the audience to a level where you can understand each other and be able to communicate. This is what makes teams become more productive. Sell your ideas and convince others on your side. That is very, very important. Next, I talked about your body language. Let's be careful with our eye contact. Why are you avoiding eye contact? That's very, very important. And if you are speaking to a group of people, let all of them see that you are communicating with them and you're not just focusing on one person. That is very, very important. If you are the two of you, focus on the person you are dealing with. It communicates quite a lot. So body language is very, very critical. We can move on. Gestures, sometimes we don't pay attention to gestures. We need to invest in understanding. And when I was trying to improve what gestures I can give when communicating, what I did was sometimes I would communicate to myself through the mirror and just see. And then sometimes I would record my conversation and just see if I was sitting on the other side, would this be good enough? And that helps you in every form of communication, whether you're making presentations, whether it's in meetings, whether it's on one-to-one. It's very, very important that you understand gestures are important, but your gestures should match with what you are trying to communicate. Sometimes you emphasize points using gestures. Sometimes you use your body language to make your point, and that is important because people listen to your body language as well. The next, facial expressions. We don't pay attention to some of these. Sometimes we are lost in our facial expressions. You are communicating an important matter, and your facial expression is showing that you are just joking about something, and you lose your audience. You lose your team. You lose the one-to-one person you are actually communicating with. And I'm just trying to emphasize that even facial expressions is one of the skills that you need to develop over time, because this is what builds teams, and this has a huge impact on productivity. Next slide. Okay, again, I was just talking about body language, the posture and movement. We can move on. Your voice, again, your voice matters, okay? When you speak to bigger teams, when you are making presentation, when you are having one-to-one with an individual, simple things like just your voice. Your voice will emphasize what is important. Your voice will stress what needs to be known. Your voice is going to low down on things that are nice to have. So voice projection is very important. Sometimes we just get lost in how we communicate and make our point because of your voice. And again, this is something you need to develop. You can't say by nature I'm an introvert. At a certain point, you need to communicate, and you can't lower your voice and people don't get the points. And sometimes just knowing when to increase your volume and when to lower your volume, okay? That speaks to the quality of your communication, okay? That is very, very important. The next slide. Okay, I wasn't too sure because of the connectivity, how much time we had taken, and I didn't want to take too much time. But allow me to just thank all of you listeners and the organizers. I thought this was very, very important. These are things that we normally take for granted. I would have opted to give a technical presentation on marketing and tourism, but you can read a lot more about that. For me, my emphasis is that productivity is highly influenced by our soft skills, even more than our technical skills. And I just used communication skills as an example. I thank you for listening to me, and over to you, the moderator.
Thank you very much, Mr. Matamwandi. You are actually not very far from the subject, because when I introduced productive capacities, one of the first things that I talked about was the human capacity. And if you look at people like Paul Krugman, who have said that the ability of a country to raise its standard of living depends on the ability to raise the output or per worker or per person. So this discussion on soft skills speaks to that enhancement of this human capacity, which actually we have really appreciated very much. Because without working on this human capacity, everything that we are pursuing will be null and void. So I'm actually very happy, and also to announce that this meeting is actually even being followed by His Worship, the Mayor of the city of Chipata, Mr. George Mwanza, who is actually one of the youngest mayors, if I'm not mistaken, in the country. So we're very grateful to have you, Sam. And this is a live discussion with a live chat where participants are allowed to ask questions on the chat. So let me just look around for the questions that have been brought out or some reflections that people have given. But before I do that, maybe let me give Director Cyprian Mayamba to give his few reflection on the importance of this subject that you've well presented, and his key takeaways that I think are very most important or critical for our viewers here. So let me just add him on stage. Mr. Mayamba, I think you followed my my discussion.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Yvonne, and most grateful to Mr. Matongo Matamwandi. I think it was broken down an otherwise very, very difficult subject. In the university, sir, people take this as by the way, the course is usually not given that much attention. In our schooling systems, these are skills that we usually don't learn. But like you've put it, this is actually what makes a difference between a successful enterprise and an unsuccessful enterprise. These are things that make a difference between a prosperous nation and a poor nation. As simple as it seems, but I'm very happy that, sir, you've given justice to this subject. You've broken it down in very, very practical terms. And I very much like the part where you brought out the cultural dimensions of this subject, because much of what we are in terms of how we express ourselves is deep-rooted in our culture, in our upbringing, in our educational systems, and in our societal values. And I think the way you've put it has huge implications on how productive we are as a nation. We've always emphasized that there's not much difference between our country and the prosperous nations of this world. In fact, we could even be much more advantaged. Like you've said, you are seated right on the banks of the Zambezi River, the mighty Zambezi River, an opportunity that many countries do not have. Yet what makes a difference is these soft skills that you've discussed very ably in this discussion. So Yvonne, let's see if we've got some comments from most of our followers. What I can see most is that they are agreeing with our main presenter today. And I think this gives us encouragement, because this shows that we need much more discussions on this subject. It's a subject not well taught in school, if it is taught, but in most cases, it is never taught. And this is what really makes a difference in the productive capacities of our country. Over to you, Madam Moderator.
Yes, thank you very much, Director. I also did like the issues of assertiveness, that were raised. So if we are to optimize on this human being and their productive capacities, we must ensure that people speak out. What is wrong, and what is right is right. If we have to change, there are a lot of things that we can do better, I think, in this country. And even the way we are presenting ourselves in the country in terms of these big issues of politics, I think, leaves much to be desired. So for me, I look at this discussion not only at a workplace, but also at the national level. So from the comments here, I have Sylvia Mansa, our very own mindset changer, who's saying that I think in all this, attitude is everything. It's a mindset change issue. And she agrees 100% with that. And then I also have another issue that she raised. I think Mr. Matamwandi also brought out the issue of online training, which is a very big issue. I think Mr. Matamwandi has talked about that. She also agrees to that, because it actually limits the body language during facilitation. I also have another comment here from Eugene, which is saying that soft skills are as much and that discussed area of our work life. Yeah, and I think this is actually a very important point, both at individual level and as well as at institutional and national level. So I don't know how best we can expand this discussion, Mr. Matamwandi. You've heard from the comments that have come from our from our listeners today on the importance of the subject that you brought to us. So work has actually not gone the way it is supposed to go because maybe of communication issues, of listening issues. I, for one, I think I have learned quite a lot from you, and I've been a victim, I know, of one of the issues that you have brought out. Director, I remember the other time I was talking to him, and then I sent him a text afterwards and said, Director, sorry, my point was actually very clear, and I think it was a very good point, but I think I noted that my tone was not very good. And I think he did acknowledge. So I think all these, I think, are very important subjects that we need to be talking about. So since we don't have questions arising from these comments that have been raised, and any other remarks, Mr. Matamwandi, you would want to just emphasize since you were rushing through your presentation. So I'll give you these few minutes to reach out to us.
Thank you very much, and I'm quite encouraged to hear that most of the listeners agree with me. I'm very passionate about soft skills, and if you allow me, I'm just going to be very, very personal. I have studied in academics, I've taught in university, but I'll be very, very honest with you. For me to have excelled in my career, I've worked for 5 multinationals. To find my way to the CEO level, I have used more of these soft skills, and it's a privilege of interacting with the other people. And then I realized that our colleagues in Europe, our colleagues in the US and South Africa, they've been on these soft skills for a long time. So the different multinationals, 5 of them that I worked with, I realized that each of these multinationals, they do have a lot of in-house training. First of all, you will not be in a leadership of any of the multinational before they take you in what they will either call group leadership program or this is leadership program. And I've done like 12 different leadership programs in my career. And when I compared all these leadership programs, they are all based on soft skills and not the technical ones. While they are doing that, we are busy accumulating master's degrees, one master's to the other master's, and now we are going into PhDs, and have nothing against the academic qualifications. I mean, I have studied all the way up to doctorate level, and if I thought it was not necessary and important, I was not going to. But in the corporate, in working in government, in working in companies, you use very little of those academic qualifications we get. It's your soft skills. So over time, some colleagues of mine and I, we started a project of developing what we call soft skills based on what we have in Zambia, those that are lacking. And in my presentation, I referred to some of them. We have actually developed modules for 27 soft skills, and among them, you'll just be shocked if I tell you that some of the modules we have developed are on things like networking skills. Why networking skills? Because we found people go to cocktails. As companies, we send our people to go to one cocktail, to go to this meeting, and we do not get any value out of that. They chat, they interact, they drink their wines, they come out, no value because they do not have the skill to network and get business value out of it. Basic things. You can't be a leader if your influencing skills are very low. You notice that most of you in your work scenarios in your team, there are certain people, whenever they give their opinion, that's what everyone agrees with because over the years they've perfected their influencing skills, and influencing skills, they don't just happen. I'll give you examples. We have heard people before they make their point. First, they will give you a background and they will validate that they are an authority in what they are going to talk about. That's part of the soft skill in influencing. By the time they make their point, you are even intimidated to question because they would have already put it that they know what they are talking about and decisions go their way. Leaders should never impose because it's not sustainable. They should use their soft skills to convince others to come on their side. So we've got a chain of those. One of them, again, I've struggled with this in all the companies I've worked for, and I'm in a leadership position, decision-making skills. Zambians and most African managers, low-level managers, they just don't make decisions. They want someone else to make decisions, and you can't blame them. They are not schooled in decision-making skills. If you don't make decisions, you don't make progress. They are scared. They don't know how to go about it. Again, this is just a skill that is required. And I can go on strategic thinking. There are people you wonder if you work for multinationals, they will tell you he has worked for 30 years. At what level has never gone into management? Multinationals and at a country level, when you reach that level of a director, going to permanent secretary, to being a minister, you don't use your technical skills, and you are not required to go in those meetings with your operational mind. They are looking for strategic thinkers. They are looking for critical thinkers. Critical thinking is a skill. Strategic thinking is a skill, and we are not imparting these in people. We are actually promoting people based on MBA, but their critical thinking and strategic thinking skills are extremely low. And I'm just using these as examples. And that's what motivated me to talk about the soft skills. Some of them are passed through mentorship, some through coaching, others just interacting, exposure. Get some of your employees, put in money, find a company that is similar to yours in America or in Europe. It costs a lot of money. They go and work there for 6 months. They come back, they are completely different. You would have spent less than the money you spend to pay for them to do an MBA, but you get more value by that 6-month interaction in such an environment. And that's what we should be thinking about soft skills. So I just thought I could add to that, but soft skills is the future. Soft skills is what your competitors will not replicate. MBAs will be replicated because it's the same books we use. Your technical machines will be replicated. Your competitors will probably even get more advanced machines than you. So there's no more secret in technical things. They are everywhere. King Solomon once said, "There's nothing new under the earth," but if you develop soft skills in your employees and build your team, that becomes your competitiveness as a country, and indeed as an organization. That's what makes the huge difference. And I'm a marketer. I'll tell you, you can't build a powerful brand without using those soft skills. People think brands are advertising and logos. No, those are just reminders of the brand. The real brand is how people perceive your product and your organization. And that is only built by people with soft skills. And that's what keeps you going. That will be my emphasis. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Matamwandi, for having given us this opportunity, on this Productivity Zed360. This is your platform. It's an expert talk platform for people like you to share all this information that contribute to higher productivity. Thank you very much, our viewers who are joining us via our YouTube chat. I recognize you, and I'm so grateful that you took time to participate. Wilson Kapenda is actually from the communication unit of the Ministry of Health, and I'm sure this information has been very useful for him. So Prudence, Sylvia, Eugene, and many others that I may not be able to, Julia from Mongo, and many others, Muke from NAPSA, Kasoka, Christopher from the ministry, and many others that have joined us. If you need this presentation, please drop me an email in the chat box, and we'll be able to share so that you can go through it and enhance your communication skills or your soft skills as we journey in our productive lives. So I don't know if Director, you have anything to say. Otherwise, I would love to close the meeting now that it has gone beyond our expected time.
Yes, indeed, Yvonne. I'm very happy that we're closing the year on such a good note. This has been our last talk for 2023, but we shall start the year 2024 on a very, very strong note as well. And what Mr. Matamwandi has done is to lay a foundation as we cross over into the new year. On the second, in the second first Tuesday of new month in January, we're going to have this talk live again, but it will be on the subject of mindset to build up on what Mr. Matamwandi has started discussing today. So we can start the year with a new mindset. We've learned from today that much of what we need to achieve in terms of raising our levels of productivity as a nation has got to do mostly with our soft skills, which mostly are issues of the mindset. And the many things that Mr. Matamwandi has talked about today. And so look out for our show. We shall be posting the advert very soon on mindset as we start the new year 2024. All I can say today is that I know Mr. Matamwandi would have wanted to say more, but with what he has said, he has actually made a huge difference in the lives of those that are listening, even those that shall listen to this video after this show. And I like the fact that, sir, you brought out very, very practical examples. One of them is the one that Yvonne made a reference to, when I think it was in England, you were asked to sell Zambia in 1 minute. In fact, Yvonne, it wasn't 3 minutes, it was 60 seconds. And he said what he had to say, and there was even time to spare out of 60 seconds. And that was a very good example of utilizing his soft skills. He was able to sell Zambia 750,000 plus square kilometers, sold in just under a minute. What a skill. Very few of us can be able to do that. And we are very encouraged, sir, that we're able to speak at length to this subject of communicating what you want to communicate. And in fact, you emphasize, sir, that for people to manage effectively, information is very important. And how you get this information is through listening. And most successful leaders have been those that are able to get good quality information. They make the best decisions. With that said, Yvonne, I'm very grateful you're able to host us today. And from the beautiful city of Port Louis, as well as we had Mr. Matamwandi on the banks of the mighty Zambezi River. And as we sign off, we're looking forward that we engage even further into these discussions. There's a question from Christopher Gasoka who says, what plans do we have to impart these soft skills in the workers in Zambia? A very loaded question. We may not answer it now, but it's a challenge we're taking, and we're happy to have experts like you, Mr. Matamwandi, and others and who are joining us on this show, who are able to help us on this journey. With that said, from me, it is goodbye. Over to you, Madam Moderator.
Thank you very much. It has been a very good discussion, and please do subscribe to our channel, Mr. Matamwandi, if you have not yet done so, together with the viewers that are actually listening to us. And stay tuned on our YouTube channel. And if it is possible, please click the notification button so that every time we go online, they're able to be notified on these very important subjects on productivity. So for us, productivity is actually a catalyst to economic growth. So we have to improve productivity for a better Zambia. So until next month, in the second, on the first Tuesday of the month, goodbye, God bless you, and I wish you a productive week and a month ending. And in fact, a Merry Christmas, in advance. Thank you very much. God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you.